We begin with the latest demand from former President Donald Trump to House Republicans. Quote, kill FISA. FBI Director Christopher Wray is expected to deliver a sobering response to Trump's decree. This is no time to mess around with the law known as FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, amid the turmoil in the Middle East and following an ISIS attack in Russia that could inspire acts of terrorism here on U.S. soil. The law allows the U.S. to collect the communications of non-Americans overseas. It's up for reauthorization as it's due to expire next week. But the continuing chaos up on Capitol Hill in the House may doom it. 19 conservative House Republicans have killed the latest effort to reauthorize it, defying House Speaker Mike Johnson and obeying Trump. His marching orders on Truth Social, quote, kill FISA. It was illegally used against me and many others. They spied on my campaign, end quote. That is false, of course. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But in the meantime, CNN's Lauren Fox is up on Capitol Hill for us. Lauren, does this create more headaches for House Speaker Mike Johnson? I think I know the answer to that. And does this episode raise the question, who's in charge up on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, if it's a day that ends in Y, there's some chaos happening, especially in the House of Representatives, Jim. And you are highlighting one of the biggest issues for Mike Johnson right now, which is this slim majority that he has, which means every single vote, even the procedural ones like we saw yesterday on the House floor, are very difficult to get across the finish line. Now, there were 19 Republicans who voted against advancing this legislation yesterday. It wasn't just one or two. It wasn't just a matter of twisting one or two arms. It is very clearly a problem within his conference. Now, we are getting new reporting this morning that Mike Johnson is optimistic that they can go back to the House Rules Committee, try to rework this process, restructure it in order to quell some of the conservative concerns that we saw demonstrated on the floor yesterday. It's still unclear, however, whether or not that will happen today, whether that would actually resolve the issues that have been underlying since December, when leaders had to pull this bill before Christmas. And I think that there's a lot of question right now, given the fact that there's an April 19th deadline and the Senate still has to act on whatever the House does, that this is potentially heading into a situation where this may not get done ahead of the deadline. Meanwhile, there are a number of Republicans who are deeply frustrated with the amount of tumult that they are seeing within their ranks, including Representative Troy Nehls. Here he is.
All you have to do is say we've got 7 more months to the presidential election. Let's try to not completely burn the damn place down. Let's not burn the place down. Let's just get Donald Trump in there. That's it. That's what we should focus. That's my focus. We're dysfunctional. We are. It's somewhat embarrassing. It may bite us in the butt a little bit in November. But my focus is Donald J. Trump now, because nobody can manage his conference. The Lord Jesus himself could not manage his conference.
And Speaker Mike Johnson is expected to head to Mar-a-Lago tomorrow to meet with Donald Trump. He obviously has a hold on the Republican Party. Now, he did have that post on Truth Social yesterday, and certainly people like Matt Gaetz, who were already planning to vote against the rule, said that that was a major boost for them. But we should note that this has been a division within the Republican Party for months, for years, this division between those who want to protect the U.S. intelligence capabilities and those who are more concerned about the surveillance of Americans. But obviously, Donald Trump and Mike Johnson going to have a lot to talk about tomorrow.
All right, Lauren Fox, thank you very much. And let's bring in Andrew McCabe. He's CNN senior law enforcement analyst, was deputy director of the FBI. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us. Let's cut through some of the noise on this. What are the consequences of this law being killed as Trump would like to see it?
Yeah, so let's understand exactly what we're talking about here, Jim, because what you're hearing on the Hill and from Donald Trump is really confusing the issue. So FISA is a big law. It has a lot of different sections. Part of it is used against people here in the United States. You go to the court for a warrant to enable you to do electronic surveillance. That's not what we're talking about. Section 702 is only used to capture the communications when people meet 3 criteria. You have to be a foreign person in a foreign place, and the purpose of the collection has to be to get foreign intelligence. It is our primary vision into what terrorists and spies and people who use weapons of mass destruction and nation states that use cyber tools against us, what they're doing overseas. It is an incredibly valuable tool, but what makes it different from regular FISA is there are no warrants. And the reason for that is you don't have to go to court and get a warrant because foreign people in foreign places are not protected by our Constitution or our Fourth Amendment. So that's what makes it different. That's the thing that's expiring on the 19th, and it is absolutely essential that we get it renewed.
And it's used to stop terrorist attacks. I mean, full stop. I mean, that's the purpose of the law. And let's go back to Trump's post on Truth Social, Andrew. He's calling on House Republicans to block reauthorizing it, saying, quote, kill FISA. It was used illegally against my campaign. They spied on my campaign, end quote. Is there any truth to this? I know we're kind of going back over, relatively speaking, some ancient history and one of Trump's old complaints dating back to the 2016 campaign.
Yeah, so to be clear, no, there is no truth or accuracy in that post at all. 702 authorities were never used in the course of that investigation of Donald Trump and his campaign and some of his campaign associates. He may be referring to the FISA that was used, that was obtained to surveil Carter Page. We now know there were many mistakes in that FISA. Those are all regrettable, but that is not Section 702. Totally different thing here. My guess, Jim, is that it's not surprising that Donald Trump is against surveillance capacity and authority for the FBI because he is someone who's been investigated by the FBI. But nevertheless, he is absolutely wrong on this count.
But when you're commander-in-chief and you have access to the presidential daily brief, for example, you have access to classified information. We will go down that road. That's a different kind of road for Donald Trump. But you are aware of what this capability does in terms of gathering intelligence information to make sure acts of terrorism are stopped before they happen on U.S. soil. And Andrew, I mean, I do want to ask you about this. Former Attorney General Bill Barr spoke to CNN about this, and Barr was ripping Trump for pressuring Republicans to block reauthorizing it. Let's listen to this. Talk about it on the other side.
We're faced with probably the greatest threat to the homeland from terrorist attack, and our primary means of defending against that is FISA. And to take that tool away, I think, is going to result in successful terrorist attack and a loss of life.
Is that possible, Andrew?
It is absolutely possible. The former Attorney General is exactly right here. And you're right, Jim. Anyone who has been a consumer of the intelligence that Section 702 provides us, and that, of course, would include former President Trump, should understand the significance of that. And then let's overlay on the time that we're talking about right now. Israel is at war with Hamas. Hamas, we know, has a presence here in the United States. The idea that we would turn off the prime vision, the prime insight that we have into terrorists who are overseas, terrorists like Hamas terrorists, who may in fact be talking to people in the United States and planning activities here. We don't know that, but it's certainly a top priority for the FBI right now. The idea that we would turn off that flow of information, which is entirely lawful and has survived every court challenge, is just astounding to me. There is no one in the community, in the intelligence community, who would support such a thing.
All right, Andrew McCabe, thank you very much for the straight talk. Always appreciate it. All right, let's discuss more now with Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, who's on the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees. Congressman, thanks for being here. I mean, we were showing this a few moments ago, Trump encouraging House Republicans to kill FISA, and just hours later they blocked its reauthorization over the objections of the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. The Speaker is sounding as though perhaps they can resurrect this, but I mean, it sounds like Donald Trump is the real Speaker of the House right now.
Jim, when it comes to your safety, the safety of your viewers, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, it's just me, me, me. And so for Speaker Johnson, who has signed up to essentially run a law firm that represents Donald Trump every day in Congress, that means standing with Trump when it comes to national security means standing with terrorists, and we're not going to renew this ability to track terrorists. Standing with Donald Trump as it relates to Ukraine means standing with Putin. And standing with Donald Trump as it relates to the border means standing with chaos and disorder. That's just where he takes you. He's not interested in governing. He's not interested in solving any problem in your life. He's just interested in solving his own problems. And he's now completely wrapped up the House of Representatives in that, and it's going to have real consequences.